Hi, everyone. I'm Abby Smith. I'm the program director at Skookum Kids, and we are about halfway into our 72-hour fundraiser. And if you're just tuning in, we are hoping to raise $24,000 in just 72 hours for Skookum Kids programs. So 72 hours is an important time frame for our work because it marks the first 3 days of a child's stay in foster care. These first few hours are both really important and really chaotic. So while social workers, teachers, and safe relatives and family friends are scrambling, trying to figure out what's next for the kids that just entered care, us at Skookum are making sure that kids have a warm, welcoming place to stay at the landing. If you know anything about the landing already, you know that we really value play. The whole house is set up to foster both physical and imaginative play. It's full to the brim with things like art supplies or Play-Doh, dolls, stuffed animals, anything that you can imagine that would spark a child to want to play. That's not just because we're trying to keep kids entertained and happy, but because we know how important play is to the healing process. So when we experience a traumatic event, like being separated from your family without warning, our brains are impacted in a couple different ways. One way is that our brain dumps all sorts of stress hormones into the body and heightens our survival instincts. It can also make us dissociate from our bodies. So we separate our body from our thinking because it pushes scary or painful feelings and memories away. In the moment, those things are really helpful responses, but in the long term, they don't serve us that well. There is a lot of work to be done in the healing of trauma, and play is a huge factor, especially with kids. It's kind of weird to talk about play in a clinical setting like this, but I'll just kind of break down what it even is I'm talking about because lots of us have different ideas of what fun is. So we can call any activity play as long as it meets these criteria. The first is that it has to be voluntary, right? Forced fun isn't fun. Second, play shouldn't be for an obviously productive purpose, but should spark a desire to keep creating or improvising. So play is about the process, not the end goal. Lastly, to call something play, we have to feel free from time constraints and self-consciousness. So we have to be able to lose ourselves in it. So now that we know what play is, let's talk about what play does. So when kids come to the landing, they're in the middle of a traumatic experience. This means that their brains are in survival mode. And big physical play helps stress hormones move through a child's body. So kicking a soccer ball, throwing rocks into the bay, running around in the front yard, playing tag, all of this helps the body process all of the adrenaline and cortisol that are stored up. Also helping kids connect with their body, knowing that they're throwing something or feeling the grass under their feet. This helps them locate themselves in a safe place, like the landing, and remind their body that they're in this safe moment, not still in the scary moment that might be racing through their mind. Another thing that happens to our brains in the midst of a traumatic event is that it's really hard to tell a story or to make sense of anything that's happened in the last few days. But our instinct to play is stored in the same part of the brain that our trauma responses are stored. So even in the midst of trauma, play is still accessible to kids. And this means that while talking about what happened might be out of reach, kids can still express themselves or tell their story through play. So this might look like kids acting out a similar circumstance as what happened to them, but in a role that has a little more power. So maybe in the game they're playing, they get to be the police officer that solves a problem, or a neighbor that resolves a conflict before it escalates. So maybe the story they come up with has a very different ending than what they experienced in reality, but they still get to act through the parts of their story. Play is also a really safe way to test boundaries and to build relationships. When kids come from hard places, they are often unsure of what adults they can trust. That's really fair. Playing games, though, helps them test the waters with less at stake. So if an adult is trusted to respect a child's rules in a game of Lava Monster or Uno, maybe a child is more likely to trust that that adult is also going to respect their authority in spaces like their bedroom or when another problem arises. Sometimes playfulness isn't super accessible to kids that come to the landing because of the environment they grow up in. Right? It's not safe to lose yourself in a game if you are in charge of keeping yourself safe. And it's not practical to play pretend a lot if you're also in charge of taking your younger siblings to school. And when these kids come into care, it's our job to make them feel safe and stable enough to let their guard down to play. And seeing these kids learn to delight in something silly or turn a bunk bed into a spaceship in their imagination is a really cool moment to be a part of, but it's something that volunteers at the landing get to create all the time. Play is a huge part of our work at the landing, but it's also an important aspect of everything we do at Skookum and how we do it. So we work really hard to give opportunities to our foster families to play together, whether that means a barbecue at Hovander Park or rolling up our skates at the skating rink. We really want to give opportunities for people to play. We even prioritize that among our staff. We know that everyone involved at Skookum is doing really hard emotional work, and that we need to be really purposeful with how we process the trauma we see every day and how we take care of ourselves. And so that means we try to make sure there's always time for laughter in our office and fun, and moments of brevity and silliness at staff events or trainings. One new way that we are bringing play to the work of Skookum Kids is through a new program launching this summer called Camp Skookum. We are so excited. Camp Skookum is going to bring reunified families together for a weekend retreat of roasting s'mores, playing on the lake, having fun at a carnival. We know that in this chaotic world, play can really seem like a luxury, and we really want to make sure that all families have the opportunity to experience how powerful a weekend of play and being together can be. So thank you so much for joining me today. We would love to hear how you and your family are getting out to play this summer. So leave us a comment below, and as always, reach out if you have any questions. Thank you so much for tuning in.